Good evening, I'm Jose Cardenas. ASU hosts a town hall to discuss higher education. We'll talk to one of the panelists, the president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, about college affordability and access for students. And in SOC, Sansa Cultura, find out what is happening at the Phoenix Art Museum for Hispanic Heritage Month. All this coming up next on Horizonte.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station.
Thank you for joining us. This week, ASU hosted a town hall focused on higher education, specifically on the White House Hispanic Initiative and college affordability. The event featured U.S. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan. In addition to Duncan, there were two other panelists, ASU President Michael Crow, and joining me tonight is the University of Maryland, Baltimore County President, Dr. Freeman A. Hrabowski III, who was also on this panel. Dr. Hrabowski, it's an honor to have you on our show tonight. I do want to talk about what was discussed at the town hall, but before that, just last week we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Yes. In many ways, your life story embodies that dream, and you were actually an eyewitness to history. Let's talk about that first.
Okay, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and at age 12 heard Dr. King suggest that if children could participate in a march for better schools, that all of America would appreciate the need to educate children and to see that even children could see the difference between right and wrong. And I said, I've got to participate. I did.
You did over your parents' objections.
My parents did not want me to go. They insisted that I go to church that middle of the week and hear this man talk. I didn't want to go. I sat in the back of the room eating M&Ms and doing my math until he said that. And I said, wow, is it possible we might be able to go to better schools? Is it possible I would no longer have to have books that were given to us after the white kids had finished with them? And so I wanted to go. My parents said absolutely not, because they were worried. And yet within a day, that next morning, they said I could. I did go. I did participate. The dogs, the fire hoses, it was awful. Most important, I spent 5 days in jail.
And this followed a personal encounter with
the police commissioner, yeah, who was not happy we were doing this, and he threw me into the police wagon. He actually spat on me. It was awful. He was so disgusted with the fact that this was happening in his town. So it was quite an experience, and what it taught me and what it taught the children was that even kids can make a difference in their own lives, can feel empowered to take ownership of their education. And as a result of that experience and what America saw, we saw changes over a period of time in the Civil Rights Act and the Voters' Rights Act. And I think it was a turning point in the history of our country.
How did it impact your life in terms of education?
Sure. Well, I always loved math. I am a mathematician, and I always wanted to be the best. Well, what it did was to say that if I worked to be the best, all kinds of opportunities would be there. And it also taught me the importance of leadership, of being willing to stand up for what you believe in, and to believe in my country so much that I would say when something is wrong, I need to talk about it. So it taught me about civic engagement, and it helped me to believe that, quite frankly, the sky was the limit, that all things were possible with hard work.
And speaking of leadership, since 1992, I believe you've been the president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Yes.
And in a role that has placed you at the forefront of educational innovation.
I've been very fortunate. My campus is an interesting model of inclusive excellence. It's very similar in many ways to ASU. The difference is that we are smaller. We are about 14,000 students. We have students from 150 countries. And if someone had told me as a kid, growing up in black Birmingham, never even being around people from other cultures or races, that one day I'd be president of a university with students from all over the world, with research and with biotech companies on campus and IT companies, I would not have believed it. And it's given me a chance to focus on some of the issues we face in our country, one of which involves the underrepresentation of certain groups in science and engineering, Another involves the underrepresentation of certain groups in colleges in general. And so whether talking about the Hispanic population or the black population, while both have made progress in the numbers who are graduating, we are still below the national average, and we need many more people with degrees, 2- and 4-year degrees, if you just listen to how our country competes against other countries.
And that was one of the subjects of discussion at the town hall.
Yes.
Fill us in a little bit about that.
Sure. The Secretary Duncan, was willing to talk about all kinds of things, but he really wanted to listen to families and teachers and students, high school and college, talk about the issue of how we get more Hispanic students in particular, students from first-generation college families, but students of color, but particularly given ASU's strength with Hispanic students, what can we do to increase those numbers, and what are the concerns that people have? And Secretary Duncan was echoing what the President has said. We must find ways to help more families of all types to have what they need in order to send their kids to college and to see more students of all backgrounds completing college. And we talked about those issues, and we listened to the questions of different people.
Cost seems to be on everybody's mind these days, with some people questioning the value of a college education. Right. What do you say to those people?
And the first thing I say is, where would anyone be without an education? If you see anyone in our society who is making money and living legally, quite frankly, just you're talking about more and more education. And when you think about the challenge in certain parts of the country where people are selling drugs, and you ask, why are they selling drugs? Well, they don't have any other skills that can be used to get a job. We need ways of educating all of our children and all of our children so that they can have the skills they need to get a job that would be considered a law-abiding citizen. I mean, the challenges of kids getting into trouble, of kids finding themselves in jail, often will be a direct correlation with how much education they've gotten. And so when we look at the global economy, what we see is that other countries are moving ahead of us in the percent of students going on to get those college degrees. And so I don't think there's anything more important to the country's future and to the future of every family than to help students to receive more education, either 2-year degrees or 4-year degrees or even beyond that amount.
And the underrepresentation that you've talked about is particularly a problem with respect to the STEM areas.
It's exactly right. We are talking about, when looking at PhDs in STEM areas, perhaps 3% of Hispanics, 2% of blacks have degrees in STEM. I'll give you one example to give people a sense of why STEM is so important. And when we talk about STEM, we need to also say the arts and humanities are critical too. We need students in all these disciplines. But the issue with STEM is that when you think about healthcare, and health disparities. If you look at the probability of a Hispanic woman or a black woman having diabetes at age 55, that probability is much higher than it is for the white population. And many of these health problems are particularly severe for people of color. And yet when you look at the PhDs working on solutions at NIH, which really works on the hardest problems, the National Institutes of Health in my area, you're talking about perhaps between 2% and 3% of the scientists who are Hispanic, and of all types of Hispanic, and under 1% black. In other words, very few scientists in our country come from populations where we see serious issues in healthcare. And then in the other areas, whether talking about intelligence or defense or environment, we need people from all these backgrounds who bring their socio-cultural perspectives to understand the issues. And right now, the percentages are very small. And so ASU and UMBC are producing more students than others, but we can do much better.
And what do we need to do to improve those numbers?
I am convinced we start in K through 12. And we start with families, and we help families understand why they want their kids to be doctors or scientists or engineers. And believe it or not, as a math teacher, I'm asked often, what can I do to make sure my child becomes a scientist or a physician or an engineer? And I surprise people. I say it starts with strong reading skills. Because when we look at problems in engineering or problems in medicine, we don't express those problems in numbers. We express those problems in words. And the problem that so many people have, the challenge that many people have with standardized tests, when you're talking about getting into med school or whatever the area, is that people don't read well enough to be able to go from the words to symbols to equations. If you give me a child who can read well, I can teach her to solve word problems. And so it's important, I'm saying, at the early ages to focus on reading and language skills and word problems with cooking, for example, and Legos and puzzles. Whether one is going into some of the creative areas in the arts or into the sciences, those same skills would be important.
Now, what about the role of the universities? I saw your TED Talk where you talked about even those kids who have a great interest in science change their minds after their first year.
You've done your homework. I'm impressed. Right?
And you pointed out part of the problem is the way we're teaching
Yeah,
these kids.
I say we need to change the culture of teaching and learning in science and engineering in our colleges and universities, because even students who are highly prepared, who are well prepared, sometimes we have AP credits and high test scores, even many of those students will leave science and engineering within the first year or two. And when you ask them why, rarely would they want to say they didn't do well academically, because it's not a part of the culture in America for students to say, I didn't do well in the class. They just get discouraged and leave. I think that some of the work you're doing here at Arizona State University, work we're doing at UMBC, you'll find that we're focusing more and more on rethinking the approach. We have something called course redesign. We've redesigned chemistry. We've gotten away from the lecture approach. People get bored listening to a lecture for an hour. You can't concentrate for an hour. I don't care what age you are. I mean, you really can't. You start thinking about other things. But if you design the course in such a way that students take ownership of the education and you give them problems and they have to discover the theories and they have to struggle with it themselves, then in working in groups and using the technology and using hands-on experiences, they begin to take ownership of the actual concept. And we found amazingly that many more students are staying in science and engineering on our campus and are learning a lot about how the science can connect to the real world. It's very important.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hrabowski, for talking to us about those important things, and hope to have you back on the show next time you're in Arizona.
Delighted to be here. Thank you.
In Sounds of Cultura, SOC, National Hispanic Heritage Month is observed from September 15th to October 15th in the United States, when people recognize the contributions of Latino Americans to the United States and celebrate the group's heritage and culture. Phoenix Art Museum is celebrating Hispanic heritage with festivities which include the Cine Latino Film Festival. We'll talk more about what is happening at the museum in a moment, but first, here's one of the films being shown at the Cine Latino Film Festival called Hecho en México.
Nosotros somos los autores de nuestra propia película.
Yo creo que hoy sí estamos preparados para finalmente reconocer esa diversidad cultural del país.
La espiritualidad está por encima de la religión. La religión nos separa. La espiritualidad nos une.
Lo que tiene que salir son los mexicanos distintos, los mexicanos que encuentran una manera totalmente propia de asumir su pertenencia, su sentido de la identidad.
Cosa que no podemos llenar, ¿no? Creo que es un motor de la vida, ¿no? Es como el horizonte. Te acercas y el horizonte se aleja, pero ya caminaste.
Todos tenemos corazón, alma, vida, sueños, sentimientos y esperanzas.
Here now with me to talk about Hispanic Heritage Month is Jim Bellinger, Director for the Phoenix Art Museum. Also here is Dr. Trino Sandoval with Phoenix College. Dr. Sandoval is also the founder at the Phoenix College Latino Film Festival. Welcome to both of you. You've been on the show before. We've talked about a number of issues. Trino, you're the founder of the Phoenix College Film Festival, Latino Film Festival, but your involvement with this particular project was on selection of the films. Is that right?
Yes, I'm also part of the Latin American Art Alliance, which is an association of the Phoenix Art Museum, and through that I was able to work with the museum staff to select the films for this series.
And as I understand, we're talking about 6 films.
There are 6 films left in the series. There are films on Latin America. They're all feature films, documentary films, or short films.
Now, the clip we saw, the trailer, Hecho en Mexico, Made in Mexico, in some ways looks like it's a promotional marketing thing, but as I understand, it was intended to show the diversity of the Mexican culture.
Yes, the documentary is by a director from England. His name is Duncan Bridgman. He spent a year in Mexico, traveling throughout the country, interviewing musicians, interviewing poets, interviewing film directors, so that he can get
I saw Diego Luna, I think, in that trailer.
Yes, Diego Luna was in the clip, and also Diego Luna has a short film as part of the series that we're going to showcase in the next few days. But the actual documentary, Hecho en Mexico, showcases different genres of Mexican music, from ranchera music, norteño music, rap Mexican music, and interviews with
symphonic music.
That's right, yes, and also danzón music from Veracruz as well. And there are some great interviews with great artists such as the Chabela Vargas, who passed away recently, and she's an icon of Mexican music, ranchero music.
So, Jim, and Trino, I'll come back to you because I want to talk about some of the other movies. But the movies are just one part of what the Phoenix Art Museum is doing in September and October.
Right, yeah. Jose, we've been, for many years, been very involved with Hispanic Heritage Month. And this year we have, in addition to all the films, Trino was just terrific in helping us out. We're helping FOMA, which is Friends of Mexican Art, an organization in town, celebrate 50 years of activity with an exhibition of Rufino Tamayo's prints. Tamayo's a major Mexican artist in the 20th century in museum, and other lenders locally, including university, us, and private collectors came together for the show. And then we're also doing an exhibition that opens October 2nd of Zul Solar and Jorge Luis Borges.
The famous writer.
Yeah, and they had a great friendship. This was an exhibition created by the Solar Museum in Argentina in conjunction with the Americas Society in New York City.
Some images that we want to show while we're talking of some of his work, which is quite interesting, quite fascinating.
Yeah, and it's kind of 1940s, 50s, Paul Klee-like to people who know.
One of the images is on the screen right now.
Yeah, so they're very festive, and these two giants in their own area were very good friends. And so the show was put together by the Americas Society in New York, and now coming here with the Holly Foundation help. It demonstrates this incredible fascination with each other and how literature informs art and art informs literature, which we don't get a look at a lot. And so included in this exhibition is not only these wonderful paintings, but also correspondence and memorabilia between these two artistic giants from Argentina.
And the first exhibition that Tamayo runs from when to when?
It opens on September 21st and goes till January 12th. And FOMA is also doing a project with the airport gallery, looking at Mexican art collected from around the valley. So if anybody's flying through Sky Harbor, they should see that as well.
And the Zul Solar in Borges?
It opens on October 2nd and runs through the end of the year, December 31st.
Trino, we mentioned that there are 6 films left in the series. Let's talk about a few of the other ones. Which one do you think is most impactful?
You know, there is a film from Argentina that's being screened on September 15th. It's a Sunday at 1 p.m. It's called Clandestine Childhood. It takes place in Argentina in the 1980s during the Dirty War, and it's about a family who is exiled to Cuba, and they decide to come back to Argentina under false identities to continue the fight against the military junta. What makes it more impactful is that we get to see the atrocities, the horrors of the military junta from the perspective of 12-year-old boys. So it's a very impactful film. And another important aspect of the festival is that we have film scholars that present the films, and they engage the audience in a film discussion after each showing.
So why do you think it's important to do this? I mean, in what way does this really amplify the reach of the Hispanic culture? Because I would assume that many of the people you're reaching are your choir. You're preaching to the choir. These are people who appreciate Hispanic culture anyway.
Well, you know, for example, this particular film from Argentina is important because the military junta came to power by overthrowing a democratically elected president. And we were hoping that there wouldn't be cases like that anymore, but it just recently in Honduras, a democratically elected president was overthrown and a military took over the government. So we're trying to showcase that history tends to repeat itself, and it's not something that only impacts Latinos, but impacts everybody. So it's important for us to be informed.
Let's talk about a few of the other films.
The other film that we're going to show is called Tanta Agua. It's a film about family relationships. It's a story of a coming of age of a young girl. It's from Uruguay.
Tanta Agua, meaning so much water?
So much water, right? And it's significant because the storyline, it's about a divorced father who picks up his young son and teenage daughter to spend a week in a middle-class resort in Uruguay. But as the title of the film suggests, so much water, they are reined in, so they are forced to spend the whole week in a hotel room in the premises of the hotel without internet, without cell phones, and without television. So they have to really bond together and rekindle the love that they had before the divorce. So the festival touches different themes and different genres for every different film.
Jim, what is the museum doing to promote the efforts and the various shows that you've got going?
Well, we're with Lavos, we're advertising. We've got all kinds of social media out there. We also have, I think, the long-standing, Jose, of a lot of the programs we've done and continue to do. We've built quite a audience base over the years. And I think, too, what Trina was saying, the Art Museum can be a place where the community comes together to discuss and understand complex, tough issues. And we're happy to serve that role. So that's another reason for the selection of these kinds of films, and to look at exhibitions like Solar and Borges, both tough customers as far as artists being very critical of what went on. And if you look at the development of this community, and certainly what the future of our community is as a melting pot of more and more, not just Mexico, but Latin America, I think we have a very important role. And we collaborate a lot with the university and with Phoenix College and others to be a place where people can feel comfortable coming together to look at some things they might not normally look at. And I think that's our real mission here.
And I know, because we've had you on this show many times, and not just in September and October, that the Phoenix Art Museum has had a long-standing commitment to Hispanic culture. Expand on that a little bit.
Well, I mean, we've always seen it as important. One of the very first shows we did when we opened in 1959 was a Mexican exhibition. One of the first objects to come in our collection was Mexican art. But we've done a lot with Mexico over the year with FOMA. Recent years, we have a curator for Latin American art. We have the Latin American Art Alliance. The Friends of Mexican Art is not part of the museum, but we partner a lot. So, you know, we see that as very important. Earlier this year, we did Order and Chaos, which was the...
We had you on the show to talk about that.
Which was one of the great, you know, the Holly's private collection of Latin American contemporary art is one of the most important in the world, and to have that based here and be able to use that is spectacular. We partner with CALA, we partner with other stations in town as well to reach out. And the other thing we're very proud of is that the museum has a real role to be accessible to as many as possible. So we remain open, the museum remains open on Wednesday evenings free. And our board struggles with that a little bit when these times of revenue, but they also realize we're here for everyone, and to get people in the door with experimental programs, broadening out to deal with literature, film, in addition to the visual arts, which is our traditional base.
Trino, we're almost out of time, but I did want to talk about the fact that the films that were selected are recent award-winning films.
Yes, the selection of films, we wanted to select films from recent years. All of them are from 2012, 2013, and 2011. And we wanted to select films that have already been selected in other film festivals. that have won awards. One of the films that we're screening is by Carlos Reigadas, who won the coveted Best Director prize at the last year's Cannes Film Festival in France. The film is called Post Tenebras Lux, which is Latin for Light After Darkness. It's a very experimental art film that creates a lot of great discussion with the audience.
Sounds like one of many to see, and
Yes.
thank you both so much for joining us here on Horizonte to talk about this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's our show for tonight. From all of us here at Horizonte, I'm Jose Cardenas. Have a good evening.
Funding for Horizonte is made possible by contributions by the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station.